Hey everyone, welcome back to A Life of KG. Today I have Will Russell on the show, all the way from Texas. He has a 7-figure business, which he tells us how he built and what the tips are to get into 7 figures. And he also teaches us his 5-step launch process. So without further ado, here he is. Will, welcome to the Life of KG. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. Thank you, Katie. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining me early in the morning because you're all the way in Texas.
My pleasure. Yeah, 8 a.m. here right now, so it's bright and early, but it's a good way to kick off the day.
Oh, definitely, for sure. So tell everyone, what is your background? Introduce yourself. What do you do currently?
Sure. So my name is Will Russell. I run a launch marketing agency. So we at Russell Marketing, we help startups, early stage entrepreneurs launch new products, launch new businesses, using a 5-step launch system that we created. Prior to this, I've been involved in launches most of my life. My first job was focused on launching new websites. Following that, I moved into a space where I was launching and acquiring attendees for events. And then following that, I decided to move into the world of entrepreneurship and start my own business. So it wasn't until I decided to do my own thing and started working uh, more clearly on with entrepreneurs that I realized most of the work I'd done to date in my career had been launches, and I was able to connect those dots. And so, taking that launch experience from the media space and then moving into a nonprofit space, and then taking that experience again into the startup space, I provided just a really broad overview of the concepts and the strategies needed for any sort of launch. And fortunately, that allowed me to build the business I have now and create a good system around it.
I guess there's lots of people that have zero idea about how to launch. So that's where you come in, right?
Yeah, that is. I mean, how to launch is such a big question as well, because in my experience, I've just seen very little resources for new entrepreneurs. I mean, perhaps it's the same in the UK, but certainly in the US, when I began launching my business, I've launched a few, but launching any of them, especially the first one, there's just so many questions around operations and the legalities and this, that, and the other. And so, yes, someone comes to us and they want to launch, and our speciality is essentially acquiring their first customers because we're a marketing agency. However, I think all in all, the partnerships we have and the people we work with, it can be a lot broader than that because there just aren't the resources available for a lot of entrepreneurs to understand even basics like logistics and shipping and payment processing and all sorts of stuff. So most entrepreneurs, we're focused on the marketing and what we're doing from an acquisition of sales standpoint. But as a consequence of being in this space, yeah, there's quite an array of questions that come our way, and we do our best in guiding people on the steps.
So before you started business, did you have guidance on how to do that? Are your parents entrepreneurs?
No, it was that was a challenge, I remember in my first year, I was invited to be on this kind of like brainstorming or research program which a friend of mine was running, and the ultimate question was, how can corporations, in this case it was a bank called Wells Fargo, how can they better support people starting businesses and entrepreneurs? And the biggest takeaway from that whole weekend was there's no cohesive, coherent guidance, really. There's lots of opportunities you can work with coaches or mentors. That's certainly one avenue. Over here in the US, there's a number of different programs called like Score, for example, where you can kind of get your footing. And then here again in the US, there's lots of local resources, local governments, local towns who can support you, at least with some high level guidance on, okay, what's my step number one? How do I even incorporate a business kind of thing? But by and large, I just don't think there's enough of that support out there. And for me, it was do what I can, try what I can, fail, miss things, and just learn as I go, really. And I was actually, the other day, I was taking some notes on a flight, and I went back to the start of that particular notebook, and it was the first early pages were notes I was taking to myself when I first started the business. And it's just funny looking back on it. You know, I think one of the pages was when I had a phone call with an insurance agent on business insurance and liability insurance. And the questions I have, you know, just show a complete ignorance into any of it, and that's fine. But it was interesting to look back on that now and see that literally I was just completely winging it, like I think many people are. And you work out how to do things by making mistakes.
You hear about winging it all the time. I mean, a part of my company is coaching businesses, and you get so many people that come to me that go, I just feel like I'm winging it. I just feel like I'm winging it. But there isn't any
Yeah.
rule book, is there? Like, we do just learn on the
No.
job.
Yeah. And that's an you bring up a very good point. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I think I've learned is exactly what you say. There is no rule book. It's not, you know, people who you see as very successful entrepreneurs, they haven't got some sort of cheat document. They haven't got some sort of, you know, special skill set. Really, they're determined, they persevere, they work hard, and they
Mm.
have some sort of belief or passion in something, and they work out all those little hurdles they need to get past. They don't, and that's just the same whether it's me or you, or I guess even Elon Musk when he was starting. You know, there was no rule book, and we're all just doing our best with the information we have, and just persevering.
Definitely. And seeing as you started winging it in business, you've done pretty well for yourself, because in the 5 years you've made a seven-figure business. So you say there isn't any rule book, etc. But what's helped you get there in business? What's your secrets?
Yeah, it's a great question because there's so much generic advice out there, and it can be hard when you're reading generic advice to apply that to your particular situation. But the truth is, a lot of that generic advice is true, and things like working hard and persevering and kind of accepting failures as a step forward rather than something you should then just drop and forget about. The mentality, I mean, the being comfortable, being uncomfortable, certainly in early entrepreneurship is a big one when it comes to things like finances. So I don't think there is, like we say, a cheat pad or a secret. In my case, I think there's always a sprinkling of luck in there. You know, I think, as I said a moment ago, the career trajectory I had sort of happened all to lead towards this kind of launch concept and this knowledge around launches. And I was able to then transition that into a very specific expertise, which fortunately there's not that many companies out there who do what we do. So it wasn't a super competitive space. Uh, I think early on, I did a very good job of identifying what works and what doesn't work. So even now I track my time a lot, but early on in particular, I tracked a lot of very specific time around kind of my acquisition methods or how I was finding business. And so that at the end of that first 6 months, first year, I had a real ROI on my time. And I think that was a big deal because, you know, certainly early on, I found myself, I did everything, you know, cold emailing, networking events. And within 6 months of tracking that time and seeing what it delivered, I was able to see, Will, you suck at networking events. Stop going to networking events, you know? So I think the ability that I had to track and understand what worked and what didn't work, and just the focus I had on doing that from the get-go really helped push me in the right direction. And if you have that, I guess, organization and preparedness, and like we said before, that like commitment and perseverance, then if you keep pushing, you're gonna end up on the right path, and you're gonna end up surprised and kind of astonished at yourself at kind of how far you've come and what you've been able to achieve when you look back in hindsight. So no secrets, just I was just committed. I was determined to get it done. I really wanted the lifestyle of an entrepreneur, and I made sure that I was just every day doing the things, checking off the list that would make it happen. Um, First thing I tried, it failed miserably. I tried to create these training courses, and that didn't work at all. I sold one course in about 6 months, and so obviously that wasn't great, but I transitioned, decided to turn it into more of a service-based business, working with individual businesses rather than more of a training capacity, and it worked out well. So just that perseverance and willingness to move into things that I wasn't comfortable doing,
Mm.
checking all those boxes just puts you on that right trajectory.
Definitely. Would you say that there's anything different in the way that you have to work or the team that you build or anything like that from being a six-figure business to a seven-figure business? Or is it just the same that you just grew? Or did you have to implement anything different just to get to the next stage?
No, I do think there's a transition there. I think there's a couple of transitions when we think about something like that. You've got a lot of solopreneurs and they've got their own individual businesses, and maybe they have a couple of freelancers working with them. And I think when you're working like that, certainly that's how I started, you can get yourself up into the six-figure range, maybe low six figures, and feel good about that. Once you want to go to the next level, upper six figures, I do think you have to, at least I had to hire and create an infrastructure that allowed that scale, because as a service-based business, there's just only so many hours in the day for individuals. And so making sure that I was able to bring in a team around me who could implement the the client work and the contracts that were being sold, then I think that takes you up kind of into the higher ranges. And then I think the next step I saw then was operationally. It was really challenging to go to push up from that high six figures into seven figures, because I felt that was really the point when I had to build a team with team members focused solely on the internal infrastructure of the business and not on client work or not on sales or not on revenue generating activities. And so having someone who's not you take responsibility for the operations, for how the team is structured, for things like internal processes, or team onboarding, all these bits and pieces that maybe don't directly generate you revenue and don't directly grow a business, but in order to have a larger successful business, you need to have these pieces in place. Because I do think, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like once you get into the higher six figures, that's when things start getting away from you and you can't see everything and control everything. And so you have to have the people and the infrastructure in place to ensure everything keeps moving in the right direction.
We definitely found that you do otherwise just lose control, but I think you have to be okay with losing control and handing that over to other team members
Yeah.
or people that are even better than you at what you do. So then you
Mm-hmm.
can work on other parts of the business and carry on growing. Otherwise, you can't be all things to all people and you can't do all the jobs just yourself.
It's still a struggle though, right? I mean, I still struggle with that every day. That is the tipping point also, where you have to make a decision, I feel, between quality control and scale, because a consequence of growing, like you say, is you can't control everything. And most entrepreneurs probably want to be in some level of control. It's their business, it's their baby, it's what they've created. And so it's a very difficult, because just, at least in my experience, by growing a team, you're going to start getting criticism because the quality control drops a little bit. There's going to be mistakes, errors are going to happen, processes aren't clear, and so that's when you start getting negative feedback in certain areas, I think, and really having to, again, like I say, work on kind of the operational side of the business and make sure every process is really fine tuned. Otherwise, the more you grow, the more people that come on, the more issues and errors that are going to occur as you kind of the work moves away from you as the founder.
Do you ever get to that point? I mean, you've scaled massively, but do you still ever get to that point where you're like, I'm done. I just want to go back to it just being me?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I never would. However, because I never would, because I don't. At the purpose, the reason I did what I did in setting up a business was because I don't want to be working all the time, and I want to have my own schedule. And I mean, I guess you could be an individual consultant and work out a business model that gives you more free time. But generally speaking, if you're on your own, you are responsible for everything from any client, blah, blah, blah. And you tend to be the one on call all the time. So that's a reason why I wouldn't go back to being a consultant or being an individual freelancer or working on my own. However, I don't know what you're seeing, but this year for us, e-commerce in 2022, it's been a tough year. It's been really tough for a lot of our clients. Um, Consumer spending's dropped a lot. Obviously, there's the economy worries in many countries. And so it certainly has, when you look at your payroll and you look at what's going on, one of the most obvious answers is okay, well, if I just go back to myself, my profit margins increase substantially. But for the long term, I think a quick fix and not really a long term solution for what I want from the business. So I can't see myself doing that, despite the attraction.
Yeah, definitely. I love the freedom too much.
Yeah, exactly. And having other people that can support you, and you've got your business that seems to have your name in it, eponymous, and mine is too. And it's just an amazing feeling, I think, to have other people building and representing and supporting and being part of the force that pushes your business forward. And I wouldn't want to go back to just being me, because I think it's a really cool experience having that team around you pushing in the same direction for something that you created and you started.
Hmm. Question for you, as we're talking on this subject, we've gone completely off track, but that's
All right,
cool.
great.
um, do you think then you're born an entrepreneur, or do you think you're made an entrepreneur?
I I certainly think there's some genetic aspect of it. I think even when I was a kid, I hated authority, and I wanted to be my own person. I wanted to be independent. When I was at school, actually, I was taking my football qualification badges to coach, and so that I was actually looking at what a football coaching career would be like. And at that time, all my friends, were planning their jobs in a 9 to 5, and my dad was on the train to London every day, and I just knew that that was never for me. And so I didn't end up going that football coaching path kind of as a career, but I feel from a very early age I knew that I wanted to have my own thing. I wanted to be independent, and I think that must be genetic. So there's certainly nurture pieces to it, I would say, like mental fortitude and determination. But I do think a big part of it is you're just born wanting to create something, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I think you're born in it the way that you are as a natural person, but obviously you learn still along the way. But yeah, interesting.
Well, you started your first business young, right? You were a
19.
teen. So have you ever worked for someone else?
Yeah, and I lasted 2 weeks.
Okay, so you had that experience and you were just like, no, this isn't for me.
I could not do it. There was just, it's not that I couldn't deal with someone else telling me what to do, but I just always wanted something more. And my
Mhm.
brain just always had ideas. And I loved just having these huge visions of what I wanted in business. And the only way I could do that was work for myself. I also feel that because I had the whole leaving school, no qualifications, I left school really early, I felt that I could only really had two options: work for yourself and fight and learn, or I'm going to go and stack shelves somewhere in the nicest possible way. And that wasn't for me. So I didn't really feel that I had an option other than to do something for myself for the lifestyle I wanted. But at the same time, there isn't anything that I'd be like, oh, well, if I did finish school, I'd like to do this. So I
Yeah.
truly believe I was naturally born an entrepreneur. I just feel like I'm wired very differently to other people.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I agree.
Mm. I do hear you talk about the 5-step launch system, which I know has helped your clients personally turn over 20 million during one launch. Can you talk us through that step system?
Certainly, yeah. So this is this launch system came into existence, I suppose. It was because it was just really a realization that, oh man, I've been doing these launches in one way or another for such a long time now in different careers. And I thought, well, how can I bring it together into one clear, holistic process? And also from a service-based business standpoint, it can get really customized and ambiguous with scopes when clients are coming to you or people are asking for different things. And so what I really wanted to do in growing the business was to try and productize the service. And so I knew that I had to come up with something that we could present as this is the product, right? This is our expertise all bundled up nicely. And we are essentially selling you the system. We're just the ones implementing it too, and that's the service side of it. But I wanted to position it like that because otherwise it's really easy to just deviate and do a little bit extra for this client, a little bit different for this client, and you end up, I mean, what you said earlier, doing all things for all people, and it doesn't work out like that. So the system kind of came into play, and it was originally it was 4 steps, and now it's 5 steps. And the one we added at the start is validation. So now we start off every launch with a validation period, which is essentially about collecting purchase intent, not just interest, but actual buyer intent around a particular product offer. So if someone comes to us and they want to launch a beauty product, we're going to put that product through a validation period where we're going to collect purchase intent from the potential customers, and also feedback from those potential customers. And with that data, we're in a much stronger position to understand, okay, how to go to market, because we might see in that phase big pushback on the price, or we might see in that phase lots of customers saying, yeah, cool product, but we need to see, I want to see it in retailers. I want to shop in store, not online, or something like that. And so we can take that data and information and build it into a more meaningful strategy. Now, like 6 years ago or 5 years ago, that didn't have to happen because the online space and e-commerce in general was just it was such a thriving arena that many people could launch something and do well because there was so much demand, and there was so much growth on Amazon and Shopify and whatnot. Nowadays, I think we've come to people are tired. People have spent, a couple of years shopping online with everything that's happened and this, that, and the other. And we're almost moving back towards in-person experiences in many ways. So it's a different world now, and this validation period implemented or added to the system just goes a long way on making clear that differentiation. A water bottle versus a beauty product versus a headphone versus a wallet. These things 6 years ago could be launched in similar manners, but now they all require a much more unique approach within that system. So we start with validation, which just gives us enough information about audiences, messaging, pricing, and stuff to be confident with our go-to-market strategy. Steps 2 and steps 3 of the launch system are then audience acquisition and audience engagement. And so for us, that's usually somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 months of a period. And it's about acquiring prospective customers. So you've validated and you've clarified and you've understood your go-to-market strategy and the data, and then you start implementing it and you're building up an audience around your product. Like, so again, I think 6 years ago, people could launch a product and they would see success. Now there's so much competition, there's so many people doing this, that you can't just build something and everyone comes and sees it and buys it. You have to really work on building that ripple effect, that traction early on, in order for it to start spreading. So our steps 2 and steps 3, the acquisition and engagement, that's exactly what that is. It's building up an audience, whether it's an email list or an SMS list or a Facebook group or subreddit or whatever the appropriate platform. We're just compiling and bringing together as many prospective customers as we can get, and engaging them. So incentivizing them, telling them about the product, telling them about the launch, getting them excited, sharing discounts, maybe sharing kind of one-on-one opportunities with the founders, and just really giving them a behind the scenes look. Because at the end of the day, when we launch, we need them to really be on our side and supporting us. And you can only do that through building that relationship. So after that, steps 2 and steps 3, we've got our audience, we've got our pre-launch community, everyone's getting excited. So then we can launch, and that's step 4, which is audience conversion. And so that conversion period is basically turning as many of these prospective customers as possible into customers in a very short period of time. So that's mostly going to be things like ads, email campaigns, SMS campaigns, that kind of thing. And so once we've got over that launch period, which is usually those first couple of days, is when we're really pushing hard on conversion of that pre-launch list. Then we move into step 5, which is just scale. So usually someone's going to come to us and they're going to have a fixed launch period. Maybe it's a 60-day launch period. And so the first couple of days of that launch period, that sales period, we're going to have this conversion. And then once we've really pushed hard on converting our existing community, we have to go and find more and scale it up and see how far we can go. And so that's when we're implementing scale optimization. And with the data we now have, because the product's now launched, the product's now selling, we're going to have an even better understanding of where to grow, where to scale, what channels to use, and so on. So validation, audience acquisition, audience engagement, audience conversion, and scale are the 5 steps of that system. And by and large, it will take most of our clients somewhere between 4 and 6 months to move through that process. And by and large, it ends up successful, not always, but the validation and that early testing period, I mean, exists in part to create that go-to-market strategy, but also, to give the entrepreneur advance warning if we just don't think this is the right path. And not every product is going to be successful. And so by doing an early validation period, we can get that data very, very quickly and present that to the entrepreneur very, very quickly and give them the choice. How do they want to keep moving forward, even though they're seeing kind of acquisition costs that will be crazy high? We give them that warning, that message. And for some, they're going to step away, others are going to continue. But the whole idea with that is that we can give them a chance to step back and save money and save time, and not invest in 6 months of a big launch when they could have, we found out after 2 weeks, hey, this probably isn't quite the right path right now.
Yeah, I bet that can be quite an awkward conversation to have with some of your clients, can't it?
It's horrible. And it's a tough space, because every entrepreneur comes in with big dreams, and of course they have to. That we just spoke about how important it is to persevere and be committed. And it's funny because there's that's to an extent. There's only, if a product is not going to sell, there's no amount of determination, I mean, let's say within reason, that's going to make it sell. And so you've got this interesting dichotomy where the entrepreneur is inspired and passionate and determined and really wants to move forward. But then you've also got this other, and you want that, you need that in the client. But then you've also sometimes got a situation where you need them to be rational and realistic and understand. And so you see a lot of entrepreneurship advice, which is just keep moving forward, keep swimming like Dory, keep swimming, keep swimming, keep swimming. But you can't keep swimming, like gambler's fallacy. You can't keep swimming until you have no money left, So it is a tough conversation. And I would say it's also tough for us to try and position that kind of statement when we've been working on something for a few weeks and maybe they've been doing it for a few years. They can think, well, who the hell are you to do that? And obviously we have the credibility, I think, and we have the history and the track record to say we're a trustworthy team and you should believe what we're saying. But people are people, and so more often than not, I would say an entrepreneur, if we come to them and we say at the end of validation, hey, this data isn't looking good to us, we think there needs to be some big changes here, here, and here. This probably isn't something we can work on anymore because we just don't feel like we can get you results. More often than not, they will move forward anyway with the same plan of action, and be unsuccessful. So we know and we feel confident in our analysis, in our reporting, but there's a very big difference. Humans aren't always rational, and so they don't always look at the data. And so, yeah, we are in a position where even though we sometimes think, or we know, we feel very confident, we're giving the right advice. We're helping this person or this team. If it's not something they want to hear, they're going to point the finger at us and not the data. And that's a difficult position to be in as a service provider, because even by helping people, you end up disappointing them sometimes.
Definitely. When it comes to our listeners, lots of them will be salon owners, those that want to be salon owners. They might be launching their own products in the beauty industry. They might be launching a training program. They might not have these like huge budgets. So if they were launching a new business or a new idea within that industry, what would your advice be to them?
So I mean, the first big piece of advice would be, just to make sure that this product has a good market fit and you're pricing it at a price that will sell, and just having that early market validation that this is a path to pursue and invest time and money in. Now, past that, I would say, especially for people with low budgets, I would really think about how you can sell product prior to manufacturing product. So something we see more and more of these days, and something most of our clients are doing, is some sort of pre-order strategy. So they don't actually have product in hand to sell. Oftentimes, they are pre-selling a future product that's in development or in progress, and therefore using that revenue to then produce the product, and the product will be provided at a later date. And whether that's selling a product at full price, let's say 6 months before it's actually available, or whether it's maybe taking deposits on that future availability, either way, that kind of method allows you to start bringing in cash flow and bringing in revenue to produce and to continue marketing the product without having to lay out a lot of cash on inventory, for example, too early. So I guess once you validated the product, if I had a small budget, my next step would be really understanding or thinking through, okay, how can I start bringing in cash even though the product's not ready yet? And how can I create like a cyclical system where I'm only producing product as I'm bringing in cash? And that will just reduce my risk and reduce wasted inventory, wasted spend, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, great advice. Going back to you as a person, as an entrepreneur, how have you personally found building a large business? Are you like, obviously you love that freedom now, but do you still find you're rushed off your feet, or have you got a work-life balance?
So I have a 6-month-old, and so this year I've struggled a bit more with balance. In general, I think I've done a very good job of creating that balance. And so I talked a minute ago about time tracking, and I still do it. So I can look back since the day I started my business and see how much I work every month on what I'm working on. And so that's actually one of my metrics of success. So at the end of the year, one of my goals is to reduce my work time by 10% a year. And so at the end of the year, I can see, and I was actually looking at this yesterday, and I'm gonna meet the goal, which I was surprised at. But that's a metric of my success. And so I'm purposefully creating a schedule, creating a structure, and forcing myself into that work-life balance. Now, it has been tough this year with a child, with a new kid. I feel like I'm not rushed off my feet physically, but in my mind, I am. I don't, there's not enough space in my mind this year. And there's been a lot going on this year. It's been a big year for me. I released a book. We moved house, we moved to Texas. We had a kid. So there's been a lot of change. And hopefully next year is going to be a bit more settled. But I do feel this far into the business, I've certainly found myself in a position where I can step back and I'm not working 12-hour days at all. However, even though I'm not working 12 hours in front of the computer, I think my mind is constantly still ongoing, and that's something I haven't quite cracked yet. I do want to get past that because I want to have a better, I don't want to be thinking about work all the time, but I've struggled at the moment to I can take myself away physically, but I've really struggled to take myself away mentally, even now.
I don't know if that goes though. Like, I am very lucky when it comes to freedom around my work. Like, I've made sure I've created that within my companies, with having my teams, etc. But I can never switch off. Like, I don't know if there is a skill to that, because you just constantly are thinking about growth or what's next, or is everything okay, or whatever that might be. These new ideas that I don't know about you pop up constantly. Like, I don't know if there's a skill to turning that off.
No, there might not be, but I guess I feel like it's a case of turning off what's actually not imperative. And so there, especially when you have your own business, and especially if you're selling product, there's customer service, right? Customer service is a nightmare. And you're going to be getting people writing you at all times and all hours and this, that, and the other. And there, especially in the day and age of today, where you can just email back right away, there's a constant urge to take action on things like that. And so in the case of responding to a customer service email, for example, maybe that's not what you do personally, but let's say it's 11 o'clock at night, your team's asleep, but you've seen it come in. This is your brand, this is your name. So you could respond to that, and you can be thinking about that. You're thinking about, oh, how can I adjust my customer service processes so I don't see this message at 11 p.m. at night or whatever. And that's important. But is it imperative you go through that thought process right at that time? Probably not. Your business isn't going to go bankrupt if you don't respond to someone at 11 p.m. at night and kind of put yourself away and don't think about it. On the flip side, especially this year, things like cash flow, yeah, we have to think about that all the time, because if I went through a little period this year of not looking at my P&L because I just didn't want to. I wasn't comfortable doing it. And that's silly, because those are things that you need to focus on. You need to be thinking about all the time in order for your business to succeed. So there are absolutely things that we're never going to turn off. We're just not. Like, I don't think I'll ever retire, for example, because I just like the definition of retirement isn't in my DNA, like you. I want my freedom, but I want my work and blah, blah, blah. So it's more a case of, can I improve on not thinking about the things that just don't matter right now? They don't have to be solved right now. Someone once said to me, a problem basically is only a problem if in 2 years' time, it will still be a problem. And so I like that. And if something's happening at work or something's happened and I'm worried about it, I do think, in 2 years' time, is this something I'm still going to be thinking about, or will I have forgotten about it? And if it's just not something I'll be thinking about in 2 years, then I try and push it away and don't let myself kind of get dragged into those constant brainstorming and thinking about the business.
I'm so glad you reminded me of that, because pre-COVID, I always used to say that. If an issue come up, I just go, is this going to affect me in 2 years' time? If not, let it go. If it is, I'll deal with it. And I've literally completely forgot that I used to do that until now.
Yeah,
But
it's a good little strategy.
it really, really is, definitely. And you mentioned your book. Do you want to quickly tell me about your book?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually up here. So launch in 5. So COVID obviously happened, and we talk about removing ourselves from business. We talk about giving ourselves freedom. Something with a service-based business is it's based on human power, and that includes me. So I wanted to, as most entrepreneurs, get my fingers in a few different areas and start creating products, start creating other income opportunities. So COVID happened. We had obviously lots of time at home on our own, and yeah, I mean, one of the biggest pain points I see every day is just the number of people that will reach out to us who just they don't have big budgets. And we have a team of, I guess, maybe 12 now, and just simply to have a team, you have to increase your costs, because you have payroll, you have to, and so it's a tough one. So when people come to us and say, well, I've got a couple of £1,000 and that's all I've got, and I want to make this work, that's not they can't work with someone like us with that. And so I wanted to make sure there were better resources. We talk about resources at the start. This book's supposed to be a bit like a recipe book, really. So anyone can take it and move through the 5-step system that we use with our clients just on their own, and do it themselves. And so it's trying to tap into a market of people who don't have the budgets or the investment support to work with someone like us, and instead want to do it themselves. So yeah, the book Launch in 5 came out a month ago, actually, November 8th, and is available on Amazon and whatnot, and on our website. And it was a great experience. Yeah, it was a long experience. It was a hard learning curve, working in the publishing industry with people. But I mean, you're obviously ambitious, and to have something like that done and checklist and done is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and that is a pretty fat book you've got right there.
It's, well, I wrote it and it was 35,000 words, and then I try and get a publisher, and they all say, no, it has to be minimum 50,000 words. So I had to fluff it out. Um, but yeah, it's very easy to read, very digestible. It's got a good chunk of content there, a good number of pages, but it's not a book that you need to read the whole thing. You can definitely pop in and read certain sections, depending on what stage you are of your business. So obviously I speak for myself, but I highly recommend it to anyone thinking about launching a business or with any idea that they want to take that next step and they're not sure what it is. I think this book can provide a really affordable, easy way to start making those steps.
We'll add the link in the show notes so people can go and check out that for
Thank
sure.
you.
If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Sure. So you'll find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, just Will Russell, or Russell Marketing, the company. From a website standpoint, russellmarketing.co is our website. You can take a peek at that. You'll find the book on there. You'll also find the links to the nonprofit foundation that we also work with there, which helps early stage nonprofits. And so, yeah, or you can feel free, anyone's always welcome to email me. My email is will@russellmarketing.co, and I always respond. So whether it's you've got individual questions or whether you just want to take a look at what we're up to, our website, my email address would be great places to do that.
Amazing. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing everything you've shared with us. I'm sure lots of people are going to take a lot from this episode, so thank you.
Thanks very much. It was a pleasure.